I know what you're thinking. Wasn't this series supposed to be in the grave already with episode 10? Well, yes, but what can I say? I thought of another 17 things only OGs may remember, and I just had to bring it back for another one. This is a series full of old clash nostalgia and things that you just had to be there to fully understand. And hey, if you want to binge the previous episodes, links will be down below. So let's get right into it.
Let's do this.
The profile button. As you may know, for years at this point, tapping on your XP has been the regular way to get to your profile. But back in the day, you couldn't even tap on the XP. It didn't do anything. But one update in 2013 added a new button. This, a blue button with the letter I. This was part of the introduction of player profiles, which was a new feature. Before this, profiles didn't even exist. By the way, take a look at this crazy old picture of profiles. It basically had nothing but your achievements. It's crazy how much has changed. Anyway, the profile button got a redesign in 2016. They replaced it with a silhouette of a person, and it looked way more like a profile button. However, by 2017, they had gotten rid of the profile button altogether, and instead you now clicked on your XP. Honestly, I had forgot it was ever a thing, you know? It's just one of those things that you forget and then you look at a really old screenshot and it all comes back to you. Smoking buildings. Alright, if you remember this next one, I want you to stop lying. No, I'm playing, but you have to be a true OG to remember that buildings used to smoke when getting destroyed. Specifically at a certain HP, around 75 to 80% is what it looks like in most footage. It would start to smoke as if it was on fire, and after it was destroyed, would stay smoking for the remainder of the battle. It's unknown why they removed this, but it was likely to increase performance. The developers were removing all sorts of stuff back in the day to make the game run smoother, and perhaps dozens of buildings smoking at the same time was a bit too much for certain phones to handle, especially at higher town halls with so many buildings. This effect would be removed in late 2012. Villager hats. Yes, villagers used to have hats and they wore them on Christmas and throughout the entire winter season. Now, I was pretty certain that this happened at least a couple times throughout the game's history, but I could only ever find evidence of this happening in 2012. The footage you're seeing now is from late 2013, and none of them seem to be sporting that hat. And the same goes for every year after. It's crazy. So I guess you would have had to have been playing in late 2012 and early 2013 to remember this. I really wish they would bring stuff like this back. You know, the little things really add a charm to the game that it doesn't have nowadays. OG Level 6 Inferno. Some of you may remember that the Level 6 Inferno had a complicated history with its design. When it debuted with Town Hall 12 in June 2018, players thought that the entirety of Town Hall 12 looked like a downgrade, but specifically the Inferno Tower. First, they got rid of the chains, and then the design just looked too similar to some of the older levels. And so at first, they changed the lens from a circle to a diamond shape in hopes that that would make it distinctive enough. But players hated it even more, saying that it looked too out of place. So they gave it another redesign in June 2019, changing the theme, adding flowing lava, and reverting the lens shape change. The Level 6 Inferno story is very similar to the Archer Towers that we mentioned in a previous episode. Bats in Lightning Spell. 2013 was the first year where we saw the lightning spell get a temporary effect. When you dropped a lightning spell, bats would swarm around it with some smoke effect. It was like a cloud of bats. And because the lightning would charge before hitting the ground, you know, there was a really obvious delay, this was perfect. The animation would play before it hit. This would return for every Halloween for a while, 2014, 15, I think 2016, though I couldn't find any footage from then, and it seems like 2017 was the last year. I might be wrong, but definitely in those days. It's unknown why they stopped bringing it around, but in 2020, when they reworked the spell, that was the real end of it. The spell wasn't even the same. It didn't have time to swarm bats around it. It was instant. Honestly, I think the perfect way to bring it back is to just add it to the Electro Dragon, since it drops the OG lightning. That'd be dope. When the heroes used to lay down when recovering. Ah yes, the classic snooze and the hero halter. It had been this way ever since heroes were added back in 2013, and every time they needed to recover their health, it looked like they were taking a nap. However, in April 2019, the first gold pass was released, and with it came hero skins. Because heroes were now 3D, I guess they also decided to change some things around because, perfect time to do that. And their recovery animation was one of them. They now kneeled as if they were recovering from an injury. Far more realistic than just sleeping it off, I guess. I don't know. But an interesting change nonetheless. It was nothing significant, but it is one of those things that you might have a picture memory of. Builder base events. Alright, they're still around, rarely, but they still exist. But remember when the builder base was still fairly new and they were pumping out events like there was no tomorrow? The Mega Marathon, which made the victory rewards timer cheaper, Battle Fest that made the rewards available every 8 hours instead of 22, the Birthday Bash for its 1-year anniversary, which had all kinds of discounts, and the 2019 anniversary where you could claim a free rune. Around this time is when the builder base events just kinda died out and became rare. As far as I'm aware, the only one of these events that survived was the Battle Fest, which eventually returned as the Builder Base Bonanza for the 2.0 launch. Wasted boost. Okay, surely someone remembers this unfortunate scenario when you activated a boost right before a maintenance, so it all went to waste. The struggle was real. Yeah, it didn't matter if you couldn't get on the game. If you had a boost going, too bad. You should have predicted the future, homie. Depending on how long the maintenance break was, by the time you got back into the game, all your boost was gone. I certainly don't miss those days. Fortunately, in October 2014, they implemented a feature that would pause the boost if there was a maintenance, and you come back to an orange boost around your buildings and you could hit a resume button. It was great. This was in the game up until the training time was removed, but the OG part here is that core memory of starting your boost at the worst time possible. Loading a single defense. Now, I've talked about having to load your defenses at some point, and you may recall that it looked like this. It's just a button with the picture of defenses. But wait a second, there is a button missing there, right? And surely you and me aren't crazy remembering a button that doesn't even exist. Well, yes, there was a button that loaded that defense only. You could choose which one you wanted to load. This was the one for the Expo. It was like a box of ammo. And this was the one for the Inferno. It was literally the Dark Elixir vial that was on the Inferno. These have surely been forgotten, lost through time. And man, what a throwback. However, by mid-2015, you no longer had the option to load one by yourself. And I mean, who was loading just one anyway? That's probably the reason they got rid of it. The old Halloween mushroom. As you know, since 2012, the regular obstacles change during Halloween and Christmas. Christmas, it's just snow, but in Halloween, we get the pumpkin mushroom. And the trees, trunks, and bushes look spooky. These haven't changed at all since 2012, with the exception of two of them. In 2012, the pumpkin mushroom didn't exist. Instead, we had this. Not really sure what it's supposed to be, but it looks like a face with a bone near it. That was the original Halloween mushroom. Now that we're on the same topic though, I wanted to mention the other one that had changed, which was the big tree during Christmas. It's not that crazy of a change, it just had way less snow. These two looked different in 2013. Honestly, I think they made a great choice with the pumpkin. No attack log. It's crazy to think that at one point, if we had a pretty epic battle, unless you were recording it, you couldn't see that epic battle ever again. It was just in your head. If something unbelievable happened, good luck getting anyone to believe you. There was no proof. There wasn't even an attack log for that matter. That's why old footage from back then is always a live attack. They didn't have the replay to show you. Eventually, they slowly started to roll out these features. First came the attack log in March 2013, then replays in May, and then in July you could share them. It only got better from here. They updated it several times until like 2015, where it's basically remained the same since. 3D hero hate. Back when they initially made the heroes 3D to be compatible with the new hero skins, players didn't really like the new 3D models, and you might remember there were tons of posts about just how ugly they looked and just the fact that it didn't fit the game style. That it looked way out of place, and also the fact that they did away with how the old heroes changed through the levels. And some players weren't a big fan of that either. The hero models have changed several times since then. For context, we are in the third iteration of these 3D heroes, and man, they've come a long way and look much better today. But I'll forever remember everyone's reaction for the first time heroes went 3D. OG sounds. I've played many OG sounds throughout the series, but hey, I just keep uncovering more, and so for this entry, I wanted to play some of them, like the old P.E.K.K.A deploy sound, and its death sounds, the old level up sound, the OG combat planning music, and finally the old heal that was changed in 2013. Selling exclusive decorations. I've touched on a similar topic before, but this one has to do with selling your limited time decorations. Those two things shouldn't go together in the same sentence, but it used to. We all know about selling decorations, I mentioned it in a previous episode, but how about selling that statue you paid real money for? I don't think anyone actually used this feature. In fact, the whole idea of selling something you bought with real money was so bizarre. You know, for a while I thought this was just some sort of fever dream I was remembering, but no, it was real. It was also such a huge ripoff. It only gave you 10% of approximately what it was worth in gems. So for a statue was like 50 gems. It's basically nothing. Now, the first purchasable decoration was in mid 2017, and only 2 years later, they added the stashing feature. It wasn't around for long. But like I said, I don't think anyone actually sold any of their limited time decor, so they just got rid of it. Having to type what troops you wanted. We have it so good nowadays. You may remember some of the old memes of getting goblins in your clan castle when you asked for something else. That definitely was a real thing. You typed what you wanted, but it's not like anyone was forced to give you what you wanted. It was more of a suggestion. And the absolute worst thing about this is that it was like this for an unfathomable amount of time. 7 years. Oh, I guess it's not that crazy, but yeah, 7 years of typing your request and getting the wrong thing. I'm not really sure what took so long. It seemed like such a simple feature, but thank God we could type it anyways, right? Because before June 2013, you couldn't do that. But anyway, after countless fan concepts of being able to receive only certain troops, it was finally added in early 2020 during one of the largest quality of life updates, when Scattershots had infinite ammo. Some of you may remember the times when dead bases were nerfed. No, it was something people said because the Scattershots would still fire in dead bases. It was a fair complaint, you know, because back then at least, all of the beefy defenses had limited ammo. In just a few short months, Supercell listened to the community and made it so that Scattershots now had a limited ammo capacity. When the clan castle had no radius, or at least it didn't show how big it was for months after the game's release. Why was that the case? No one knows. This led to many players underestimating the clan castle's capabilities and leaving it outside. Only players that were serious about trophy pushing caught on to the fact that it activated at a certain range. But what was that range? You know, the game didn't tell you or show you. It was like a hidden mechanic. Fortunately, before 2012 wrapped up, a radius was added to the clan castle. But yeah, that is another 17 things only OGs may remember. This used to be one of my favorite series to work on, but yes, I did conclude it at episode 10. At the time, I just felt like I had mentioned everything I needed to, but over the past few months, I just kept writing things down for some reason, and here we are. But I don't think there's gonna be another. Consider this a bonus episode. With that said, hope you guys enjoyed, but hey, before you go, YouTube thinks you'll like this next video, so why don't you check it out? As always, see you guys in the next one. Peace!